back in 2012, I was presenting a podcast called Lost on Radio, which was part of the music blog Write Chord Music. So every week I was kind of sharing a bunch of independent artists that were flying under the radar of mainstream music culture. And one of the artists of the week that we had on was a guy called Espe. It was the first time I'd come across Aaron, and his I think his single was Hanging by a Thread that we were featuring. And that was on an EP called Through Frozen Forests. And the track Through Frozen Forests had been placed on a Christmas commercial for a supermarket, I think, that winter. I can't remember exactly the time scale of it, but I remember listening to that, and there was really something about that track that just caught me, captured me. I think it landed in my ears at just the right moment and in just the right way. And I think it was around the end of 2023 when Aaron appeared on a social media feed with a post about a book called On Songwriting, Practical Tips and Insights from a Decade in Music City. And it was his book. And I was intrigued because, I've been following Aaron ever since sort of first coming across him back in 2012. So, 11, 12 years. And I've really kind of admired his approach to building a career in music, kind of on his own terms. It's been really interesting to just keep in touch with what he's been up to and the way that he's been approaching things. As far as books about songwriting go, this was actually a slightly new endeavour for me, which is strange because, even as a songwriter, I've never really spent much time really kind of delving into or reading theory or reading books about songcraft itself. My biggest teachers have been the bands and artists that I've listened to and studied over the years. Through attempts of kind of emulation early on, I learned about song structure, how to write melodies, chord progressions, and I've kind of, I guess, learnt from trial and error through that over the years. Also from playing with other musicians, working with a variety of producers and engineers, and just many thousands of hours experimenting, writing, recording, producing, banging my head against a wall, and experiencing the delight of flow and breakthroughs amidst all of that as well. And also learning from feedback, noticing what it is that people connect with, reflecting on the essence of those things. Not so I can repeat the product that came out of a creative process, because, that's impossible. But rather so I can, I guess, invite the creative spirit that gave rise to particular ideas with the hope to capture something new in a kind of similar way or down a similar avenue. And so I'm kind of, I guess, at a stage right now where I'm feeling kind of drawn to explore, to share my own insights into songwriting, to really have conversations about songwriting with other people. I really want to collaborate, to coach, to play with, music beyond the way that I have traditionally used it, I suppose, as a form of creative and artistic expression. Not to stop doing that stuff, but to, I guess, expand certain horizons and open myself up a bit over the coming months, really. Songwriting has always been such an intuitive process for me that I have, I guess, traditionally found it challenging to articulate like what goes on within that process. It's very mysterious in many ways. And it's also a craft that I find very humbling. You think you know something, and then you have an experience that reminds you that no, you really don't. Or at least that there is always something surprising waiting to I guess, turn your certainties and expectations, turn them 180 degrees, and say, what you thought was the way of the truth about this is, it might be that, but it's also this. And so, I'm kind of excited to have more conversations like this conversation that I'm sharing in today's episode around songwriting, and kind of applying that to creativity more generally, bringing it into how I see creativity as really running through our lives, whether we're thinking about like a proper craft, an artistic expression, or we're just thinking about, bringing a creative spirit to the everyday. And yeah, I've begun working with songwriters who want to maybe pivot a little bit, or expand what they're doing. Also those who haven't ever written a song but want to explore writing. And so Aaron's book has really reinforced my passion for this and sort of given me some practical footholds into, I guess, sort of supporting, thinking about, like what this looks like in practice. So as soon as I started reading it, I was like, I'm going to just shoot Aaron an email to see if we'd be up for chatting about some of the ideas in it. And, I'd love to learn more about what has gone on beneath the surface of his story and all of that kind of thing. So, the book itself's got a really simple kind of reference feel to it. I think it's going to be a great reference book for, getting unblocked quickly during a creativity session, or for, just starting the day on a creative footing, on that with a sense of, creative possibility. I think it's got a real accessibility to it. It's relatable, very easy to read, short chapters, just like little nuggets of great stuff. So I would say it's ideal if you want to return to the simplicity of a creative process and get back to the real beating heart of it all. I spoke with Aaron while I was in Lapland in northern Finland in January, and I'd actually been on a walk through the frozen forests a day or two earlier, and I took the EP with me in my ears, which was it was a delightful experience. And if you're watching the video version of this, then you'll see some of the scenes that accompanied the soundtrack. I'll kind of weave them into around the conversation, and also all the music you're going to hear in this episode is Aaron's music as well. He's given me permission to use it, so I hope you enjoy that, and I hope you enjoy the conversation as well.
I'm sure it's like a lot of songwriters and musicians start where a family member has a guitar, and for me it was my grandpa Omer, and my dad and I drove over to his house one day. So I asked my dad, "Do you think Grandpa would teach me some chords on his guitar?" And he said, "Oh, I bet he would." So we drove over, and my grandpa sketched out G, C, D, and E minor, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then he showed me, how where to put my hands, and then he uh, gave me his guitar, put it in the case, and lent it to me for probably a year until I bought my own. But it's I didn't have anything else to do besides play guitar, and I started to really I was only allowed to listen to Christian music growing up, and Christian music for the longest time was like Sandy Patty and Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith. But then in the mid 90s, they had kind of like a surge with Jars of Clay. I don't know if some of these bands or have heard of, but it meant there's all of a sudden this wave of music that was really pretty cool. It
Yeah.
wasn't just Sandy Patty. And my parents were youth leaders, so they would get in the mail these boxes of CDs, with little like Bible studies around the music, and I would just take the CDs and then um, go down to the basement with my guitar and try to learn the songs, and um, so that's how it started, and I mean, lots of alone time, no friends, and and just spending time learning and singing. The other thing that happened, which was significant for me, and maybe UK culture can resonate with this, but we didn't talk a lot growing up. Like nobody, you don't really compliment each other on pretty much anything. You just like so nobody told me one, I wasn't really playing my guitar for anybody. I was just playing it in the basement by myself. And two, if I ever did, it's not like anybody mentioned anything. But one time, my dad, I heard him coming down the steps, and I heard somebody coming down the steps, and it was actually my dad. And he peeked his head in, and he said, "What are you working on there?" And I was had a book of guitar tabs, and I was trying to learn like John Denver's "Country Roads Take Me Home," uh, and he said, "Oh, he asked me like, will you play some for me?" And that was like my first audience. And afterwards, he said, "Aaron, you have a nice voice." Uh, that's about it.
Mm.
And then he probably said, you know, like it's also time for dinner or something else. But that that was like um that kept me going for a long time. Just that one compliment from my dad. And I think I was at a point in life where I was just thirsty for some sort of attaboy, you know.
I've been hanging by a thread, don't wanna live with the regret, knowing that there's still a chance. Every single word you said is on repeat in my head, and the future we had planned. Don't leave me here, I'm running out of breath, hanging by a thread.
So one of the things I'm really interested in is people who identify something that matters to them and figure out how to explore the possibilities of approaching it in maybe slightly unorthodox ways that work for them. And Aaron is one of those people, you know, doesn't have a huge social media presence, like he's never really sort of been everywhere when it comes to that sort of stuff. He realised early on that he didn't want to tour, that playing out live a lot was not great for him. And yet he's got like 1 million people listening to his music on Spotify each month. So he's figured out ways to carve a career that works with him and for him, and that he can, work with, like through his own sort of needs and desires. I speak to so many people who believe that to succeed in the fields that they're passionate about, they need to do what everybody else appears to be doing, or they need to do it in a certain way, and that you might end up kind of feeling that sense of burnout, that sense of overwhelm, because it's like, I just cannot sustain this. I cannot do this myself. So I really like finding people who just show these slightly gently rebellious, unorthodox ways of approaching things in ways that work for them, so that we can kind of use that in our own lives. One of my favorite things to do as a coach is to explore the plethora of alternative options, and to just open ourselves up to, like, how can we make things work that actually feel good and sustainable to us. And often there are a lot more options available than first appear, and so just bringing that sense of like allowing more possibilities to occur through sort of really creative brainstorming and thinking. It's one of my favorite things to do. Anyway, back to the interview.
Kind of midway through, I realized something about myself. One, I didn't know I was having panic attacks, because I didn't have language for it, and mental health wasn't as talked about then. But I was having panic attacks, and they were really they kept increasing to where whenever I'd play, I'd be talking myself off a cliff, in the bathroom. splashing water in my face. And so that, thankfully, Heidi, my wife, we had just been, we'd been married for like a year. And she was the first person who was like, this is, you need to get some help for this. Let's figure out what's going on. And so I just kind of took a break and realized, one, I didn't like traveling as much as I thought I did. And if you're a touring artist, you kind of have to
Big
enjoy.
part of it.
Yeah, big part of it. Uh, um, and then two, um, I realized I didn't like performing as much as I liked just making music. And I didn't know if there was a way to do that, but I just knew um, I couldn't do the touring thing anymore. So for a while, I was in Colorado still, and I thought, you know what? The only way for me to stay in the music business is probably to like tune pianos. So I got a job. Asked, I knew a guy who had a piano studio and repair, and he tuned pianos. And I asked him if his name is Hank. And I asked Hank if he would teach me how to tune pianos, and he graciously did. He like really just kind of took me under his wing for a summer and taught me how to tune, taught me minor repairs, and so I did that for a while. I started tuning pianos. It was 2011, and the Fray were recording here in Nashville at Blackbird Studios, and I was still in Colorado. But my friend Ben, the drummer, said, "You know what? You should." Well, one, I told them I don't know what I'm doing with music anymore because I don't want to tour. I don't, and they said, one, let's have a breakfast with our manager. And then, so we met with Kevin. His name is Kevin Spellman, and he said, "Have you ever thought about moving to Nashville?" And I hadn't. So, um, while the Fray were recording, Ben said, "Why don't you and Heidi come and stay with me at our hotel?" So that's what Heidi and I did. We went to Nashville. I had a couple people I knew here set up some meetings. There's one friend who I've been close with since 2006 from like MySpace days. His name was Busby, is Michael Busby, and he's since passed away, but he was starting to make a name for himself in Nashville just with the co-writing. And he said, "Hey, I'll set you up with a few meetings." The Fray set me up with some meetings, and I just went to these meetings in Nashville and had no idea what I was saying or what I was supposed to be doing. I thought that they would just be really interested in my songs. Um, I kind of understood that they're just doing favors for their clients, which is fine. Heidi and I talked afterwards and we're like, you know what? Nothing's going on in Colorado. She had just finished graduate school. We were both working. She was working at Whole Foods, grocery store chain here in the States. I was working at Starbucks, just like, hey, and tuning pianos as well. And we're like, let's just pick up and move. So we visited in May. No, we visited in April or May, and we moved the next month. That's how we ended up here. And I kind of realized, like, okay, this is, if I were going to be a professional surfer, I would move to, California or Hawaii. And if I'm going to try and make a go at professional songwriting, then this is where I need to be. And so I just started learning and co-writing with everybody I could co-write with. And really, speaking of Through Frozen Forests, that was my first real successful song. I don't know, do you remember where you heard it or how you heard it?
I was trying to remember. It was I think it was when I was presenting a podcast back in, it would have been around, was it around 2012? That sort of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2012.
So yeah, I was part of a podcast called Lost on Radio, which was kind of taking lesser known artists and promoting them essentially. And I think through Frozen Forest came across my desk, so to speak. Then,
Yep.
And I remember hearing it for the first time. I was like, yes, this is. And I was saying before, like I'm currently in Lapland, and it's like just beautiful trees and snowy landscapes everywhere. And I was out for a walk the other day, and I was like, I know what I'm taking with me. I know what I'm putting in my ears. And so I put that EP on, and it matched perfectly. And I've always thought, you know, I don't know whether it's an intentional thing that you are able to manipulate deliberately, or whether it's just part of the sound that came from that song itself. But it has a really wintry vibe to it, beyond the lyrics, like the music, the production, everything just fits. Like it all sits so perfectly together. So yeah,
Thank you.
That's always been I've always had a real soft spot for that track.
Yeah. Thanks. My UK audience grew from that song because I think it, Sainsbury's, which is not a grocery chain here, but it is, and you know, it's, I think, a pretty big chain. It sounds
huge,
to me, I've never been to one, and I don't. It sounds because it's not just at a grocery store, right? It's like it got like you can buy sweatshirts or
it's everything. It's a big
Okay. But they licensed that song in 2012 for a Christmas campaign they're doing, and that's
yes.
and they that was my first introduction to licensing, and but it was, you know, it wasn't me. Something you learn quickly here in Nashville or LA, if that's where you're based, is that a lot of times things are cart before horse. Meaning, I used to think a band records some music that they have been writing their entire lives, and then serendipitously it ends up on a TV show, and I thought it was sequential, like, and I think once in a while it is, but here it's more like the opportunities are presented, and then you have a bunch of people trying to write for those opportunities, and that's where publishing deals and record deals start to, well, at least in my experience, that's where it's more like, for lack of a better, it's like insider trading or something. It's hard to get those opportunities unless you have built your own brand up to the point where people want your sound, or you're kind of going more sneak attack where you have a deal, you're just writing lots and lots of stuff, and something ends up sticking, and that's how it was for that song. Through Frozen Forests, it was an easy song for me to write, but it was something that was more based on a prompt than it was. Like, it wasn't I was sitting around one day just thinking about forests and winter. It was probably even in the summertime. I don't even know. I can't remember. But I remember that I grew up in northern Minnesota. That scene, winter is no stranger to me. And back to what you said about whether or not I control how the feeling, you know, to some extent I don't. It's just sort of a vibe I naturally have, and I didn't know that I had it until people kind of help label it for you. But part of it's my voice, but then instrumentation too. It can there's choices being made that are more appropriate than other, acoustic guitars and mandolins and just like more soaring vocals than choppy stuff like that,
Yeah.
Um,
Sort
so
of twinkly top end ice
yeah,
vibes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. The EQing was more working with high end. Yeah, we don't have to get in the weeds of EQ, but
Yeah.
and then I mean that was 2000, so that was 2012. My first, if we're gonna go full circle to today, my niche here became more licensing for film and television. But I was also writing for and with other artists. Um, that's just something you kind of have a few different irons in the fire,
Mhm.
and I guess that's like any musician trying to make a living. Um, and I feel like I'm just tending to the one that's hottest at the moment, and then going to the next one. Sometimes it's my own artistry. Sometimes it's writing for other people. Sometimes it's I haven't had to tune pianos in a while, but it could range to that. When I wrote the book, when I started writing, it was 2021, and it had been around 10 years, and so uh, it just been a lot of years of just survival, like trying to figure it out. The As we're all aware, there's no the hard thing about music, and part of the beauty of it is that you can't reverse engineer any success you've had.
Mhm.
So you have to, not that I haven't tried, not
Yeah.
that I not that I haven't tried to rewrite Through Frozen Forests, or this song of mine called Making All Things New.
Mhm.
Um, there's been times when I'm like, man, that worked. Why can't it work again? I'm just, but it's not like that. So you just have to keep trying and follow your curiosity, and but the book, and then to now was really like part of it was the start of the pandemic, and co-writing slowing because I don't know if you can see here, but we're in a shed. I'm in a shed in my backyard, and most of my life in Nashville has been people coming here and writing songs with me. And then in 2020, that stopped.
Mm.
So I the book was a product of me being alone, and just kind of working on stuff that I felt curious and passionate about, and didn't know it was going to be a book, but ended up being that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. I mean, a couple of threads there that what I'm hearing is like an adaptability that you have, and like that, when you realised, okay, I don't actually want to tour. I don't enjoy travelling. I don't like, but I still want to be a musician. I want to be involved in the music industry somehow, and sort of stopping to think, okay, what's that going to look like? And then making that kind of work on your own terms, however long that took to kind of get into that position. And then, yeah, the way you're describing that process with the book, it was the co-writing slowed right down. Nobody's allowed here at the moment. And that creativity, that, curiosity still wants to find a way to express itself. And actually, this is an opportunity to kind of reflect on this last 10 years and write some of the thoughts and some of the things that you've been kind of picking up along the way. And what I really love about the way that you've kind of laid the book out and approached it is they're all, what is there, 5 main sections, and then mini chapters that are just really nice bite-size kind of reference things that, like, I know I'm gonna just pick up and flick to, like, you don't have to read it in a chronological order. You can just, okay, that's going to really help me, that chapter, and it takes 5 minutes to read a chapter, if that. So yeah, it's really lovely how that
Thank you. Yeah, I've never adaptability is a good way of looking at it, and I think you're right that creativity will find its way out somehow in all of us. Actually, and my wife can tell this story probably better, but when I decided to quit music after I was touring, and I just started seeing a therapist, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna quit cold turkey. I'm not gonna do shows. I started making greeting cards, which sounds really random, but that's where it went. My point is, I started, like, I would spend hours in Hobby Lobby. I don't know if you have Hobby Lobbies in the UK, but it's like an arts and crafts store.
Mm-hmm.
And I started making these rubber stamp designs for greeting cards. It seemed random, but I mean, looking back to your point about adaptability, I think, when I knew I wanted to stay in the music industry, I don't think it mattered. Well, I knew creativity was huge for me, and some things are more utilitarian than others. Like tuning pianos is not really a creative process; it's just a useful process.
Probably quite annoying if somebody tunes a piano creatively.
That's an amazing point. Yeah, create a piano tuner. That C is actually a D sharp. That'd be amazing. But I think until you figure out what until your creativity is kind of useful to other people, I've found that you kind of have to use whatever your piano tuning equivalent is to get in the door. If that makes sense, because I mean, art should be useful by nature. You should just be able to experience it. But because there's so much of it out there and people have a choice, it's sometimes hard to find your way into getting people to listen. And even, like, I think even publishing deals to start are a little bit like politics. It's not just like, oh, we think you write great songs. It's, we like what you do, but we also like that you're writing with these other people and you're connected to these other people, and you're kind of coming into this sort of how can we all help each other, scratch each other's backs sort of thing. And it's not something I love, and it's an ongoing struggle for me, but it is something I've had to accept since I decided to raise my hand and say, yes, I want to be in the music industry. And it's pretty self-explanatory, industry, music business, that it's going to be a part of it. There's going to be money involved. There's going to be deals involved. There's going to be people taking advantage of each other, but there's also good people and trying to do good work, and that makes all the difference.
Warning signs show me the way. I go straight towards them all. Why am I always running into a burning house?
I really like how you talk about the two ways of writing a song. So you've got the GPS method and the painting method. Yeah, what are they? And do you sort of gravitate towards one or the other?
Yeah, good question. So the GPS method is just like reverse engineering. It's more like problem solving. So, um, it's based around a hook, and a hook can be anything from a line in your notes app that you overheard somebody saying. It could be a guitar riff. It could be any number of things, but you know that that's, I call it the GPS method because you have an address, like a destination, um, but you just don't know how to get there. So when you're writing a song using um, this method, you're you know where you're ending up, but it's like if somebody sent you a text, you have to figure out the rest of it. So you it's a completely different headspace because uh, it's more analytical. And it's easy to get heavy-handed with craft and try to be too clever, but it's a lot of how country songs are written. Um, Actually, I'd say most country songs are written using this method where you have a title or you have a lyric, and it really even the title, it could be the title of the song too. Oftentimes it is. Um, so just think, yeah, for your listeners, GPS, reverse engineering. You know where you're going, you just don't know how to get there. Um, uh, I guess I could let me an example I give in the book is I had this line in my notes app called "Things I've Never Seen," and it just, when I wrote it down, I can't even remember the context, but it just jumped out at me. And then I didn't know if it was going to be a serious song or about places I hadn't been to or what. And then I ended up um, making it a silly like children's song. Um, so if my address is things I've never seen, how I set it up was a cow running in the pasture, the mailman in regular clothes, a secret getting past my mother, my father touching his toes. They're more alike than different. At least they are to me. These are just a few things I've never seen. So it's all, that's an example of, you know where you're going, but you kind of reverse engineer to figuring out how to get there, which is far different.
Just that sort
from,
of hook,
yeah,
the hook
the
that
hook
you've
is,
noticed, and it's like there's something I want to,
yes,
play with there and get to. Yeah.
yeah. Painting is more of an emotional process, more of a um, you don't necessarily have a hook, you just have a feeling. It's I call it painting because when I think of an abstract painter, I think of them, doing a brush stroke here, brush stroke there. They don't really know what they're making until it's they're sort of halfway through and then they see it. And that's, I think, growing up, that's how I wrote songs. Just, feeling something, being inspired, and sitting down with your guitar and having a few lines here and there, but not knowing where you're going. Um, and then suddenly you have a song, and it's only after you reflect on it that you know what it's about. And then it very, very different than reverse engineering, where you have a clear idea of where you're going. Painting is more like, it's more about the experience of writing. It's more enjoyable to me, um, because it's a process of discovery. But um, it oftentimes is not. It's hard to be commercial and paint at the same time.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's kind of in service to the writer almost. It's like a bit of a journey, uh, but harder to give to your publisher and say, hey, can you do something with this? They're like, no, we can't do anything about a song about whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, but those in general are the two. I'm sure there's plenty other ways, but I've found those are the two most common methods. And I like back to your question about what I gravitate toward. It's definitely the painting method I'm more comfortable with, but uh, I do have fun every now and again just having a line and almost um, just kind of making up. It's easier to make up lyrics and then put music to it using the GPS method. Sometimes that's fun.
Part of what I'm exploring at the moment is really wanting to play a bit more with the like that GPS method really, and challenge myself to both write in that style and also co-write a bit with others and write for other people to sing. Because one of the things in the book that struck me was when you talked about it's like the difference between a good song in terms of songcraft and a song that maybe kind of really works, but it's art. And I was like, that's interesting. So it requires the songwriter as the artist to perform the song, and it's the emotion, it's the feeling that's put into it in that way that really connects with the listener. And it might not, if somebody else was to perform the song, it might be like, what is this? What's going on here?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read any Ralph Murphy. He passed away. He used to be like president of ASCAP, I think, but he's also a hit songwriter, and he would write little blogs about stuff. But he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said when somebody comes up to you after one of your performances and say, "Hey, I really really like your song tonight," what they mean is that one, they had a good time tonight, the food was good, the atmosphere. There's all these lists of what happened. They think you have a nice voice. And then somewhere down the line, the fact that you have a good song, it may or may not be true, but it's really, and he was trying to get at the craft of a song, what is that? But I think, for the most part, people don't care. They're just hearing music and they like it or they don't like it. It's a good song if they like it and they like your voice. It's a bad song if, that's probably why Bob Dylan gets so much flack it's because a lot of people don't like his singing voice. I like his singing voice, but I think that was something I didn't have any clue of until coming to Nashville. I just thought, a song is a song. I didn't really distinguish between art and songcraft.
Yeah, as both self-taught through listening to music and also through being in bands, working, having conversations with other songwriters, that kind of thing. It's kind of that's where the learning has happened for me. But seeing these kind of thoughts articulated, and these ideas articulated in the way that they are in the book is like, okay, it's really either putting into words something I've kind of known but not known that I've known, or just like giving a little, flicking on the light bulb of that's true. And that was a very much a light bulb thing for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. I think that's part of the. That's been a comment from some songwriter friends too. Is like saying what we know intuitively, but just kind of giving a little bit of language to it to hopefully be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And without squeezing the life out of it. That's what I really
exactly,
appreciate
yeah.
about it as well.
Yeah,
because it's easy to overanalyze, isn't it?
right. It certainly is. And back to GPS and painting, I think I do say this in the book that sometimes they overlap. Sometimes think you're starting one way, you end up doing another way. Regardless of however the song is formed, it's still incredibly mysterious. Like back to not being able to reverse engineer. I couldn't reverse engineer any song I've written. Like even if I just wanted to make it again, there's too many random things that happen in the process that it's like trying to reinvent your last game of pinball. You know, it's you can't really do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's something I've noticed over the years listening to, like, following bands or following artists, and have the debut album, and then the second album like is often an attempt to replicate some, like, the aesthetics a lot of the time of that first album, and then the third album will be like okay, we can't do that, let's just do something new, let's move in a different direction, whether that's like a radically different direction or just the next stage of their exploration, rather than going back round to the beginning and trying to reverse engineer again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's so much pressure after the first album to get, if there's any success with the first one, there's all this pressure put on the songwriters, which is why so many of them come to Nashville to co-write, because they're getting pressured from. I mean, maybe some of them really want to do that, but oftentimes it's their management or the label is like, "Hey, it's time to put out an album. Send them to Nashville." Another case in point of this is American Idol and The Voice. So you all of a sudden have these people who win or even place second or third, and they have an audience with no material. So they end up coming to Nashville to get material, and it can be, sometimes it can work, sometimes it doesn't. But right now, and it's not that that isn't still happening. It is, but right now it's more TikTok. So TikTok artists are writing. You got a kid writing a 90-second song. Maybe it's finished, maybe it isn't, but it gets all this traction, and record labels, it can be hurry up and let's make this person a product that we can market. And I don't know what the next thing will be, but I do it can be discouraging, but it also is another phase of adapt or die, because I've been doing this since my first record was 2005, when you could sell CDs at shows, and I just needed to sell CDs. And then it was like, oh, will he download my MP3? Oh, you're only downloading 3 songs, not the entire album? Okay. And then to streaming. So there's been enough changes to like figure out, like, how do I want to stay in this? Do I want to be making TikTok videos? No. Well, what are my other options? And so I'd be lying if I said I'm not trying to figure that out on an ongoing basis. Even
it changes so rapidly as well, doesn't it? In terms of like, you kind of put all of your energy into figuring out this TikTok trend. It'll be probably something else within 6 months, and you can sort of, it's making smart decisions is key in terms of like, okay, is this the thing that's current? Is that really the best use of my like resources and time and energy now? Or is there a way of kind of thinking, okay, what's going to be down the line? Is there anything with longevity that you're doing right now that actually, once we're through this moment, because there's elements of this which feel quite fleeting, feel like unsustainable in terms of, well, actually a 90-second song, maybe that is all we're going to ever have for the rest of time. I hope not. You know, and like I'm an old fart who just really pines after the days of albums, because I think there's something so beautiful about having an album with album tracks on, the songs that wouldn't exist if all we have is singles, and the songs that really, for me, have been often the most meaningful by the artists that I love, that actually they're the slow burn tracks that take a few listens. They, you know, you at first you're like, oh, that sounds weird, there's elements of this that, you know, I can't quite get on board with, and then as you listen, you just sort of unpeel all the layers, and they become your favorite songs on the album.
Yeah.
And
Like slow burn, I feel like you know, you're saying, I think artists making quality work that their fans can appreciate, like slow burn albums, or I think part of it's too, like, knowing your audience and knowing who you are as an artist, and kind of taking them somewhere with you. And yeah, maybe it can start from TikTok, I don't know, but it's gonna go back to it's always gonna be back to like concrete principles of making great art, being a good human being, unless your brand is to be an asshole, in you know, like doing sustainable things that aren't just tactics, which easier said than done, but I'm a fan of the album too, like you know, just this the story form, and being taken on a journey by the artist based on 35 minutes or however long, versus just hearing one song out of context, which has its place too, but I also am an old fart. So.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, there was one thing from the book that I really wanted to talk about, which was the story that you tell of going to the funeral of a colleague or friend who is a prolific, successful, so you don't name them, but like it's like prolific, very successful songwriter, and how you were struck by the things that were said at that funeral, and the fact that it was about them and it wasn't about all these accolades and stuff, and that was almost just a reflection of their character, and that really spoke to me. I spent 6 years working as an undertaker, as a sort of funeral home, and I was always really struck by that, like in the eulogies that I heard given, you know, hundreds, thousands of them. It was always the little things, the little, the kind of idiosyncrasies, the little points of love that people experienced of the person, however successful they were, however they maybe achieved all sorts of things. They had letters after their name and all that sort of stuff, but that was never what people talked about. People who knew them, people who loved them, talked about, and so that story that you shared in the book really spoke to that. And I'd just love to hear more about why you included that and like what that means to you.
Well, I think like, speaking of reverse engineering, I think we all it's no secret, like we're all ended up, we don't know when, but the moment we are born, the only thing for certain is, gonna die. If we're trying to, and I did this as a practice. This was after his funeral. I was reading a book by Donald Miller, and he had, it was practice in writing your own eulogy. So you kind of do it as a aspirational identity, so that you it sounds morbid at first, but it's once you kind of get it down, that it becomes an amazing filter for how you want to live your life and how you want what becomes great for decision making. Like certain things become clearly a no or a yes. Um, but it was interesting with songwriting and music being such a big part of my life, and then remembering his funeral and with all of the success, it was just very striking that he could have been a plumber, he could have been like it didn't that stuff is very, it doesn't matter. And not to say that your work doesn't matter or that uh, you shouldn't strive to write a hit song or make win an award for your art. I think that's fine. It's just when it comes down to it, it's going to be the people that were put in your life. How did you treat them, and did you do your best to pay it forward and help them out, or was life more about you and your accolades? Because at the end, it seems like even if you have those, it doesn't. It's pretty meaningless. But I thought lessons from a hit songwriter's funeral would be a good way to end the book, just almost because I think I say, well, in the beginning, I say, I wrote the book for 6 people, and 4 of those are my sons. And so there's a bit of like me just trying to distill some of this down for them. But it's also what I would say to anybody getting into the music industry. It's kind of like, the whole start with the end in mind thing. So, yeah, I think music, it's a great industry to be in, but it's also, at the end of the day, it's relational. It's doing good work and treating people with kindness and trying to make the world a better place. It's the cliches that we're all living for.
Yeah, yeah. No, I thought it was a great way to end, and yeah, I like that sort of starting with the end in mind as what do I want people to be saying about me at my funeral? That kind of thing is, yeah, really powerful. To think.
I would recommend just as a practice for anybody listening, just to do it, and not to, it's easy to for me to be very self-deprecating and just being like, well, I worked hard, but the more you get into like the details of it, the easier. Like I always try to respond to people online or through email, anybody who reaches out, because it's a part of how in my eulogy I write that I try to always make time for people and help them on their journey if they reach out. It's not like everybody is reaching out, but the few people who do, I can do that. But I think I wouldn't do that as much had I not been clear about, like, yes, this is the value of mine, and I know because because just writing out your own eulogy can clarify a lot of that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. It sort of affects how you do things, not necessarily what you do. So as you said, it might be important to you to get those accolades or go for that hit single or whatever, but it's how you do that is informed by that, the way you're describing this process. And I really appreciate the fact that you responded to me when I reached out to you, and the way you did that, and the fact that you've given your time for this.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
I love the premise of just that gentle rebel thing. It's very, very cool.
Yeah,
Thanks
I appreciate
for reaching out.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, and just before we finish, like anywhere you want to direct people, what's going on for you next? And
probably just go to my website, aaronespe.com, and then I do a weekly newsletter. But I'm also right now working on I kind of have a heart for songwriters who are overwhelmed by parenting and their day jobs. And so I'm creating a course right now for like just a framework I use every day to write a little bit and get a lot of songs written over a short amount of time daily. So I'm trying to, it's been something my audience has like expressed as a pain point, and I thought I can do this. So that's what I'm currently working on. I think it'll probably be either a digital course or a workshop, but just teaching a framework so that the goal is to for parents, busy professionals, to keep their creativity thriving. And I know that's what that's like with 4 boys myself.
I bet you do, yeah.
So that's what I'm working on. But yeah, if people want to go, just aaronespe.com and that'd be step 1.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Oh, Aaron,
thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. It's been so great. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to meet you. Thanks, Andy.
Right. Cheers, Aaron.
See ya.
See you soon.
Sunshine, warm and golden morning, making all things new. Home, where my heart is. Home, where my love lives. Home, my beginning and end. Home.
So a big thank you to Aaron for taking the time to speak with me. I cannot recommend his book on songwriting, practical tips and insights from a decade in Music City highly enough. I'm going to be sharing my reflections on parts of it over on Patreon, where I'm also talking a lot more about songwriting and the adventure that I'm on with my own music right now. Also, as I mentioned before, if you are a songwriter and are feeling stuck, or you want to kind of pivot and expand your horizons in some way, or you're not yet a songwriter but you would really love to explore the possibilities of it, give it a go in some way, then I've got some coaching availability specifically around that. I really want to be kind of working with people around songwriting and around developing music and that kind of thing. So I absolutely love helping people connect with music in meaningful ways, and part of that is creativity. It's connecting, expressing yourself through music creatively. And so, if that's the kind of thing that you're listening to, that you're thinking, well, yeah, that would be worth checking out, then absolutely get in touch. Maybe you've never thought about writing songs as something that you could do. And maybe it is. Head over to patreon.com/Andy Mort. Sign up there for, I'm going to be sort of sharing resources, insights and explorations to help you on your creative journey. Or if you just want to simply follow mine, then that's the place to do that. Or just drop me an email, get in touch via social media, wherever you want to find me. Please do. That'd be great to hear from you, and to hear what you thought. Was there anything in the conversation that I had with Aaron that stood out to you? I think it was great. I just really enjoyed his candid way of expressing himself and sharing honestly, like what the struggles have been for him through that decade in Music City, and some of the joys and challenges of a music career in that sense. It's just refreshing to hear somebody with just a lot of humility, and humility mixed with ambition. I think it's a great combination. Okay, I think that's it for this week. Until next time, do remember that you are an artist The world needs your art. Now go and make somebody's day. Bye-bye.
Oh, my loved ones, through frozen forests, hold my hand. All together, warm in winter, hand in hand. You're a part of the family band. Nothing you could do could ever change that. You don't listen to a word I say. Just remember my blood runs through your veins. Oh, my loved ones, through frozen forests, hold my hand. All together, warm in winter, hand in hand. Sing a song that we all know, something upbeat, get our mind off the cold. Don't worry, we'll be there soon. If you lose the words, just carry the tune.